guys, let's see. Today we're talking about accessibility in game design. So I specifically wanted to design for Nintendo Switch. It's actually an application that is one of the most accessible in the industry right now, in terms of gaming platforms. There's online and there's also physical. This is the one I decided to go with. This is my how might we create a navigation menu for gaming platforms that have increased accessibility options. There are some games that have more or less accessibility options depending on what they had in mind when they designed. So this problem is significant because of the different abilities of players. There's a lot of different things to think about, like mobility, sight comprehension, and just overall what accessibility keys are available for customization. So I began with a literature review, seeing all the pre-existing nonprofits for gaming accessibility that existed and what they were doing, and then also my own research. And here you can see that 75% of the users were not really aware of accessibility keys. That 25% did know about it, but they only initially used it at the beginning when they were setting up their games. And these are the three categories I decided to go with. So yeah, I got a lot of different insights from people that interviewed. This is a very important quote from Maddie Wooden, who's a project gamer. She said, "When my injury happened, I got extremely depressed because I had no finger movement. I figured there was nothing I could really do anymore. Eventually, I found help to mod a controller, and thanks to remapping options, I've been getting better since." So this is speaking to mobility specifically and having an adaptive controller, which we will talk about in a second. So these are the big three categories that I decided to go with. There are a lot of different things that you can adjust in video games, but for Nintendo specifically, I wanted to focus on mobility as a category, audio, and visual. So here you can see what the adaptive controller looks like. This is the Holy Flex controller from Game Access, which is a nonprofit that dedicates itself to creating adaptable controllers that can be changed depending on the player's abilities. And this is kind of what Nintendo currently has for the Switch, and how it can be adapted. As you can see, it like plugs into the device and it becomes an extension. So here's a prototype. Going into system settings, we can see that we have like the different game options available. Kind of going through this. There is actually no accessibility tab. It is something that I added after interviewing. I found that having accessibility is a category that is present currently in like phone systems, but for some reason Nintendo didn't have it, so I thought it was really important to have that be clear. So yeah, going into that, we have our three main categories. We have audio, visual, and mobility. I decided to go with a slider menu option for different things. So here we have grayscale, contrast, screen scale, font size, colorblind modes, which include Photonopia, Liternopia, and Trinopia. And then we also have photosensitivity reminders for anyone who experiences like some sort of like seizure-related things, or just in general has stress or increased screen time that affects it. So these are reminders that will pop up throughout that we will get to see in a moment. We also have the audio and reset buttons on the bottom. Right now it's set to auto, which is kind of what people with these abilities would normally have. And from there, it'll be easier to adjust once you have a starting point instead of starting from 0. Moving on to audio, the options for audio are navigation assist. So different ways to see the navigation menu. We have sound cues. Sound is very important when it comes to games. I did look into 2 different games. So I looked at Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild and also Animal Crossing, and the different ways that players interacted with them. For Animal Crossing, it was seen that their sound cues were most helpful. So amplifying those, I thought would be a very important category to have. And then finally, you have increasing sound effects and also text-to-speech and narration, which you can turn on and off, depending on player. And finally, our last category, mobility, tying into the quote from the beginning. You can choose on and off. There is an adaptable controller, the Holyflex, and you can just manually connect that onto the system and have it work within this reimagined remapping of Nintendo Switch's overall system settings. And yeah, basically, we also have shortcut accessibility. So here's a shortcut, which is very simple. So instead of having to go through the menu and having to go through all of those things and having to onboard an individual, the simplest way that I found was to click on this button right here. Very simple, it's already part of the actual device. And players can know this and have like a tactile way of using it without even knowing like how to use the system or being onboarded to use it. So originally there was only sleep mode and like brightness and airplane mode, but there's also going to be a little accessibility tab that users can click on. So as long as you press the button for 2 seconds, it will pop up the accessibility menu automatically, and they don't have to worry about it having to be integrated into a system because it already exists. This is what a photosensitivity reminder would look like. It would have an eye strain, yes or no button, and then kind of check your energy levels. 2 simple questions that would help people better gauge where they are within the game. And this is more like responsibility within themselves and setting that up in the settings menu. So that concludes my presentation.
So I'm not clear what the question is. Am I saying yes, I have eye strain currently, or like what is the question asking me there with eye strain?
Assessing whether or not, so it's a yes or no question.
But what, in a sentence, what is it saying? Are you currently
experiencing eye strain?
I think you need to say that.
Okay.
Right? That isn't as clear. And I was wondering, right, you were talking about physical devices that get added onto this.
Yes.
But in order to get that physical device to be connected, I had to go through, if I understood this correctly, I had to go through a series of screens that might be extremely difficult for me to navigate without it. When I first paired my iPods to my phone, I just opened it and it discovered it automatically, right? And I wonder if there's a way for you to be able to do something similar to the device. That is there something on the sort of OS of the Switch itself that's built in that automatically detects it, so that it makes it easier for people to not have to navigate through a series of screens that are difficult. Does that make sense?
Yes, currently because it is a physical product, it does need to be physically connected, but I'm sure that could be a next step in exploring that. But for now, I did mention the pressing 2 seconds of a pre-existing button. So in that way, it would make it more accessible and easier for people who haven't been onboarding to the system to automatically be able to find it.
Okay. Yeah.
Real quickly, I just, in the beginning, I thought, or overall thought, the way you designed your slides were kind of clean and nice. You did good at that, they weren't real cluttered or anything. I would like to see, going into all the accessibility features, which I think are great ideas for them, but to show what was it and what is your proposed change. Like, I had no context of what is it now? Like, what I didn't understand the scope of change you're suggesting, and annotate like how that new feature will help at accessibility. Like, write it out. Like, for example, if you want to say increase color contrast button, this will help. This particular setting helps people to, or visually challenged to read better. Kind of break it down for us to see the justification for the change and how that helps specific individuals with different types of accessibility needs. Because you're just showing a lot of screens, and I didn't have a lot of context for them. Yeah.
You're a gamer?
Yeah, moderate.
Okay. I'm not a gamer. I'm like whatever's below moderate.
Okay.
Right? I probably have 3 that I might play. And so for me, I was a little lost in terms of what's the before and the after,
Yeah.
right? That would just help folks who aren't familiar with this to say, oh, I see the difference, right? With that, I completely agree.
I decided to omit them for time constraint purposes.
Understood.
But I do have the screens available as well. Do you have any like insights on that? On like how many, or just like a single like, emphasis on a particular one for before and after?
You know, I would choose it as many that don't do too many, but maybe a handful that the folk to hone in on. I would suggest that.
The biggest pain points.
So I'm looking at the time, they're gonna stay back a little bit, so if you know, if you have more questions, how's that sound? All right, Cam, your turn.